Halo 5 released on October 27, 2015, a release that most would agree was extremely lacking in content for a Halo title. Despite this, however, the game somehow managed to muster up an 84 on Metacritic, for whatever that's worth. In this video, we are going to take a journey through all of the major updates that Halo 5 received and see what was good, what sucked, and most notably, what should have been there at launch. So grab your popcorn or whatever you fancy as a snack and let's get started. Before we hop in, I just want to make a couple things clear and get them out of the way so that you kind of understand what you're going to get out of this video and where I come from in case you're new to the channel. I think that Halo 5, while a game full of flaws, is a decent game and a decent Halo game. I say this because if you're expecting pure negativity, this most likely isn't going to be your video. However, there will definitely be some here and there. What we won't really be doing though in this video is breaking down the core features and mechanics of Halo 5, as this is going to be a video more focused on the post-launch content. That all said, when Halo 5 dropped in October, it was missing many, and I mean many features that previous titles had in the franchise, and we're going to note those as we go through the timeline. What we will most likely never know unless we get some type of developer tell-all is how much the launch of Halo 5 was affected by the absolute pile of poop known as the Master Chief Collection. That could be a whole video on its own, but long story short, the Master Chief Collection came out in 2014 and was supposed to be this amazing product where we could play Halo CE, Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo 4 all in one spot. This was not the case though at all, as the game came out unbelievably broken, and this undeniably took some resources from 343 as they had to put some work in to try and fix the game. However, we don't really know how many resources this took from 343, as it's not known to the general public. That said though, we do have to wonder, should 343 have delayed Halo 5 just like they did Infinite recently, or was releasing it when they did the correct decision? So Halo 5's first update came out 1 month post-launch and came out on November 18th. This was titled The Battle of Shadow and Light. In this update, we got Big Team Battle. Big Team Battle did not come in the launch of the game, and as I'm sure many of you know, BTB has been a core aspect of Halo, going all the way back to Halo CE, where people would get a bunch of their friends together and play Capture the Flag on Blood Gulch, or if you were more of a Halo Custom Edition person on PC, you were hopping into all sorts of lobbies, maybe you were playing on Danger Canyon or any of those other huge Halo CE maps. BTB has been core in the Halo community literally since the game's inception, and it wasn't there at launch on Halo 5. Granted, this was only about a month after launch, but just the fact that one of these modes wasn't there is very telling. Now I understand you're going to say that we got Warzone, and I do agree, Warzone was meant to sort of be that BTB replacement, but Warzone is its totally own thing, as while it is pretty fun and a mode that many people do enjoy, Warzone is rec based and it's got some PvE mechanics, and it's totally different than just standard BTB. Now when we got BTB, we got 4 maps: Deadlock, Basin, Guillotine, and Recurve. Now I want to note that all of these maps were made in Forge, and none of them were proper made maps. This is a huge disappointment, as it's going to be a sign that you see throughout the rest of these updates, as we never got actual developer made Big Team Battle maps, one of the many things that is disappointing about Halo 5. Like I've already said, BTB is a huge part of the Halo community. There are people who only play Halo to play BTB, and that's through all of the games, and these BTB players, unless they were going to go and play Warzone, literally didn't get a developer made map throughout all of Halo 5's lifespan. Now if I was a purely BTB player, this would be pretty damn disappointing to me. Now I will admit that before we get into these maps, I'm not a huge BTB player, so I'm not really going to give you my thoughts too much on how the maps played out, but kind of just tell you what they were. So the first map, Deadlock, was a mostly faithful remake of Standoff from Halo 3, Basin was a spiritual successor to Blood Gulch or Valhalla, Guillotine was a remake of Headlong from Halo 2, and Recurve was inspired by Longbow from Halo 4. You can get all this information from the different Vidocs that 343 put out at the time, or honestly just playing on the maps, it's pretty obvious in most cases. This is another thing that's kind of disappointing. So while I am a fan of map remix, I actually really enjoy playing different maps that have been remade in games. Not getting a single BTB map that was original to Halo 5 was honestly a disappointment. So along with BTB and these Forge made BTB maps, we also got 48 new wrecks. This included things like armors, skins, nameplates, assassinations, and different vehicle and weapon variants. As we go through the rest of this video, I'm not really going to dive into all the different wrecks throughout all these different updates because they all include them, unless it's specific things like new weapons or something that I find really notable. So overall, this is a pretty cool update because we got Big Team Battle, but if you consider the fact that Big Team Battle should have been there at launch, it is kind of a disappointing update as we really didn't get a whole ton of new cool things. Next up was the update on December 2016, and this was the Cartographer's Gift. Now this is a pretty big update as it brought Forge into the game, another key aspect that had been in Halo since Halo 3, finally made its way into Halo 5 a couple months after release. Along with Forge, we also got the Spunker, which is, the classic rocket launcher that we're all a fan of. So while Halo fans were definitely pretty happy with that, I mean, to me that isn't a huge deal because it's just basically a different variant of the rocket launcher, although for nostalgia's sake, it is pretty cool. We also got a new Warzone map, the Battle of Noctis, and a new arena map, Overgrowth. With the different Warzone maps, I'm not going to get too deep into them because again, I'm not a huge Warzone player, so I don't want to misconstrue the community's opinion at the time. Now the new arena map, Overgrowth, this was a remix of Plaza, and it's probably one of the worst maps that I played throughout Halo 5. I really wasn't a fan of the whole remixing map trend that they used, and this map was a pretty big disappointment to me as someone who was playing a ton of arena at the time. Now with this, we did also get two new BTB Forge maps, and these were Entombed, which was inspired by Burial Grounds from Halo 2, and then Antifreeze, which was meant to be based on Sidewinder and Avalanche, but ended up being completely different and kind of playing like a unique map. And this was touched on in one of the Forge Vidocs that 343 put out. Another big feature of this update was that we got social playlists. Yes, you heard me correct. 2 months after launch, we got social playlists. Before that, the only ways to play Halo 5 was to either play ranked or to play Warzone. Those were the only different ways you could play multiplayer. There was no casual mode or social mode that you could play with your friends if you just wanted to play Halo and have a good time and not sweat it out, and you also didn't want to play Warzone. Obviously, it was cool that they added in social, but I can't believe that it took them 2 months to kind of realize that that was something that we wanted. Halo 5 really took on this competitive first mentality with Warzone there for the casual side, and they really missed the boat that a lot of people do want to play 4v4 or Big Team Battle in a social environment. We also want to play a lot of more fun playlists, things like Fiesta, etc., and all of that was missing as we only had ranked. Along with this, we also got seasons, which now every month or so you got a new season, which just reset the ranks and whatnot. They also added in a very basic implementation of the file browser so that players could share custom modes and maps that they had created. This would be expanded upon in a later update. We also got advanced controller controls that allowed for really diving deep into your controls, like things for aim acceleration as well as dead zone controls. These were very helpful if you really wanted to fine tune your aim. However, one thing that they were never able to tackle in Halo 5 was that feeling of heavy aim that everyone talks about. They also added in some machinima controls for content creators. And then last but not least, we got 30 new wrecks, more skins, more assassinations, more armors, etc. One thing I want to note, and I'm not really going to get into a ton of the nitty gritty in terms of balance updates, but in this update, free-for-all actually went from 8 players to 6, which was a pretty big deal at the time if you were an FFA player, because when we were playing FFA with 8 people, a lot of the games are pretty hectic, so it was really nice that they lowered it down to 6 players, as that was something that the FFA community was asking for. I was a big fan of this because I was playing a ton of FFA at the time. That's usually what I had my champion in, so to have it go from 8 to 6 was a very welcome update to me. Next, let's move on to the Infinity's Armory. Now this update came in January 27th of 2016, so about a month or so later. I wouldn't say that this update was nearly as big as the previous, but we did get a new arena map, Riptide, and a new Warzone assault map, Urban. Neither of these though were fully unique maps, as Riptide is a remix of Fathom, and again, similar to the previous remix, Overgrowth played out pretty dang terribly in my opinion, and then Urban was a remix of the Battle of Noctis Warzone map. In this update, we also saw 343 add a new weapon to the sandbox, or you could say an old weapon, and that was the Halo 2 BR. The Halo 2 BR was pretty cool. They added it into the sandbox. It was totally separate from the Halo 5 BR and kind of threw back some nostalgia and is a BR that a lot of people liked. Along with this, we also got over 50 new wrecks, including weapon variants, armors, emblems, and more that have been added. Next, moving on another month or so later, we got the Hammerstone update on February 24th, 2016. In this update, we finally got the game mode Assault added into Halo 5, which has technically been around since the franchise's inception, although the first time that the game mode actually used a bomb was in Halo 2. So this is a game mode that had been around a long time in the Halo franchise, and it making its way back into Halo 5 was pretty cool, although like many of the other things that we touched on so far in this video, I would have really preferred to see this at launch. Now we also got a new arena map in this update called Torque, and this was the first unique DLC map that was added to Halo 5. Now I'm not going to lie to you, I again thought the map was pretty crap, but I give them bonus points for finally putting a unique map into the game, so that was kind of nice. We also got a couple new weapons with this update, being the Halo CE pistol and the gravity hammer, both cool and welcome weapons added to the sandbox. Since Assault was added into the game, we also were able to get Griffball, which a lot of people are a fan of, and honestly, Griffball is pretty fun in Halo 5 due to the advanced movement mechanics. 343 also tossed in Fiesta Slayer in the update, did some general map balancing, and added various new wrecks like they did in the previous updates. Moving on, next came the Ghosts of Meridian update on March 6th, 2016. This update included two new maps, the Warzone map Skirmish at Darkstar and the new arena map Tyrant, both being unique new maps. Again, wasn't a huge fan of Tyrant, but at least it was a new map. They also rolled out a beta for the new game mode Warzone Firefight. If you aren't aware of what Warzone Firefight is, you can kind of figure it out a little bit from the name, but it was an 8-player round-based co-op Warzone experience with different dynamic objectives. So instead of fighting on their team, you are working with your teammates to defeat different PvE objectives, usually different bosses and whatnot. This update also added in Forge weather effects, which was pretty cool. So now on your different Forge maps, you could have things like rain, snow, papers, embers, dust, and moats. So this was pretty cool for different forgers as it allowed them to do more creative things with their maps. Obviously, just like all the other updates, we also got various new wrecks. Next up came the Memories of Reach update on May 16th, 2016. In this update, we finally got Infection, which before that, if you wanted to play Infection, you had to do the jank things that we did back in Halo 2, where you would team switch if someone killed you, which is just crazy for me to wrap my mind around. While I am by no means a huge Infection player, I do play it from time to time, but if you don't think that Infection is a huge part of Halo, you're just missing out on something. There's always been a huge Infection community. A community of people that want to create cool Infection maps and they want to play them with their friends, or some people just like jumping into matchmaking and playing some of the matchmaking Infection maps. It's crazy to me that it took almost 7 months to add Infection into Halo 5. It's just dumbfounding that it took this long to get Infection into the game. With things like this, it really makes me wonder sometimes how in touch 343 is with the different community and what we really like about Halo. Like I said, I'm by no means no Infection player, but I know that there's a very vibrant subset of the community that all they want to do is play Infection. And it's crazy to me that they couldn't play Infection in their game for 7 months. It's like the people who only play BTB, and they couldn't play BTB in their Halo game for over a month when the game dropped. And then even when it did drop, they didn't get any unique maps for it. Things like that about Halo 5 just completely dumbfound me. Other than that though, this update did give us another new arena map, which was Stasis. Stasis is another map remix, and this time is a remix of Torque, which was one of the new DLC maps that was added. Again, not a map that I was a huge fan of, but I guess at least we got another arena map. In this update, we did get some really cool armor additions like Emil, George, June, and Kat from Halo Reach. So if you were a big Halo Reach fan, you were now able to get some of their armor sets and play with them in Halo 5, which was a cool throwback. Forgers also got a pretty decent update in this one, and that was the ability to add material base and overlay options for different objects in Forge, which really helped Forgers kind of spice up their maps and make them look a little better. We also got some updates to the matchmaking preference UI, and this allowed players to choose between balanced, expanded, and focused matchmaking, which kind of lets you choose between trying to find matches as soon as possible or trying to find matches that were as balanced as possible, with the balanced option being in between of those two. Next up came the Warzone Firefight update on June 29th, 2016, and this included the addition of the Warzone Firefight mode permanently, a new arena map known as Molten, which was a remix of the rig. Now this is probably the first arena DLC map that I really enjoy. In all honesty, the rig's layout probably plays a little bit better than Molten, but Molten just has such a cool aesthetic that I've always really enjoyed playing on it. We also got a new Warzone map, the Attack on Sanctum map, and got a new Forge Canvas title. Along with that, we got a new UNSC vehicle, the Wasp, which was a flying vehicle that was pretty cool, and we got HCS team skins for the first time, which allowed players to buy skins for their favorite HCS teams that then supported those organizations. We also got Campaign Score Attack, which allowed you to kind of play campaign a little bit differently, as you could play with that more competitive mindset and try to get the highest score possible. Next, we moved on to the ANVIL'S Legacy update, and this one came out on September 8th, 2016. So at this point, we were about a year out from the launch of Halo 5. This update was a pretty cool one for me, as we saw a new arena map known as Mercy, which is a remake of the map Haven from Halo 4, and this is by far my favorite map that they added into Halo 5, and honestly, one of my favorite maps in Halo 5 altogether. I just really love the layout of Mercy. It's a lot of fun. It's really fun for free-for-all, along with different Slayer games and whatnot. Mercy also looks really nice in Halo 5. The aesthetic of it looks really great, which is a step up because I wasn't a huge fan of how Haven looked in Halo 4. Now in this update, we also got Halo 5 Forge, which was the addition of Halo 5 on PC. If you've been following the channel for a while, I have made videos on what Halo 5 Forge is, but if you're not aware, basically Halo 5 Forge is kind of what the name implies, and it's Halo 5 Forge on PC. It also allows you to play custom games with your friends or just, forge and make maps. Here is also where we got the content browser that really allowed players to search for different maps and game modes, and this is where they really expanded upon that primitive file browser from the earlier update that we spoke about. This was pretty cool because you could search for maps and game modes based on different tags, along with a ton of other different options. So if you wanted to find a remake of Halo 3 maps, you could use the tag Halo 3 and the tag remake, and then it would pull up any maps where the creators use those tags on their map. Definitely really cool for being able to find custom content. Along with this, we also got the new Warzone Assault map Temple, and we got the Halo app on Windows 10. The Halo app, if you're not aware, has basically been decommissioned at this point, but it was sort of a launcher for Halo 5 Forge, Halo Wars, and Halo Wars 2, and then it had various different news updates and videos. So it was basically supposed to be an app all about Halo that you got on Windows 10. And while it was never anything special to me, I didn't hate the app, but now obviously that it's been basically decommissioned, if you want to play Halo 5 Forge, you have to uninstall it, otherwise the game just basically locks up when you try and launch it. One thing that I really want to note here is that for Halo 5 Forge, at this point we do not have the customs browser. So the only way to play custom games on PC was to manually invite people from your friends list. This is really notable because while Halo 5 Forge has never had a huge community, it has had a little small community throughout its time, but during this point it was really hard to find matches, as you basically had to get on different Discords or talk to some of your friends and set up lobbies. There was no way for you to just hop on and join games. Next up was the Monitor's Bounty update on December 8th, 2016. So we're now well over a year from the launch of Halo 5, and sadly, in my opinion, this is the last major update for Halo 5, although we will talk about one more update after this one. In this, we got some really cool updates for Forge that 343 kind of noted as the Forge minigames, and this really improved upon Forge in Halo 5 with a lot of new improvements and additions to Forge's scripting that allowed creators to really make cool things. With this, we also got those 2 new Forge canvases, Barrens, and Depths. They also rolled out another new weapon, the Grenade Launcher, which is pretty self-explanatory, but a cool weapon nonetheless. Here is where we got the Custom Games browser, so this kind of harkens back to Halo 5 Forge. This is where Halo 5 Forge really became playable in my opinion. But also the Custom Games browser is huge on Xbox, as this now allowed people to go in and browse and see custom game lobbies that were open, search for specific things they wanted to play, and hop into those lobbies without having to even know the people playing in them. This was an awesome feature that was added and something that really enhanced the Halo 5 Customs experience. We've been asking for this in MCC for some time just because of how amazing it was. The last big thing in this update was they made the Observer mode available to everyone. The Observer mode up to this point had been used in different tournaments, but you couldn't just use it if you were part of the general public. And now we fast forward almost a year. The next update, the Overtime update, didn't come out until November 2nd, 2017. Now at this point, I want to kind of just talk about some general timeline things. The Overtime update basically came out 2 years after the release of Halo 5, and obviously about 3 years from where we are right now. Since this update, Halo 5 has gotten no major new updates. It still gets general updates as in playlist rotations and whatnot, but there hasn't been any new major content since then. No new developer made maps, no new game modes, and no new cool features. Before we get too deep into that, let me talk about what was in the Overtime update though, and that included enhancements for the Xbox One X, the game mode Oddball, a game mode that we'd had again since the start of Halo with Halo CE. Obviously this was nice to finally get added into Halo 5, but again, a bummer that it took this long to get a game mode that we had had since the start of Halo. Local servers were also added in this update, which allowed players to have more low latency when they wanted to play locally. And we got another round of HCS skins, although this would be the last one. One big thing in this update though was some of the weapon tuning, which was deployed across 14 different guns. And I'm not going to go super into this weapon tuning because that would take a ton of time and it isn't really the purpose of this video. But in that weapon tuning, they pretty much killed the Halo 5 BR by adding that weird vertical recoil to it. So that was a definite bummer to me. And that pretty much wraps up the post-launch updates for Halo 5. From the time that the Overtime update was dropped until now, like I mentioned, we haven't gotten any major updates. It's basically just been playlist updates and general updates just to keep the game going. Now I understand that they probably didn't expect Halo Infinite to get delayed all the way until 2021, but to me it's a huge bummer that 343 dropped support for Halo 5 when they did. I think Halo 5 really could have benefited from another year or two of post-launch updates, even if they would have been a little less frequent. So that first year we basically had an update every month, and then we had about a year gap between the updates after that. But if we could have had a couple or 3 or 4 updates a year for the next 2 or 3 years, that really would have helped tide us over until Infinite instead of having to go back to MCC. Don't get me wrong, I love MCC, but I just think it's weird and kind of a bummer that 343 dropped their new title, being Halo 5, in favor of the older MCC. I really think they should have been supported simultaneously, let people who like MCC play that, and then let people who like Halo 5 actually continue to get new content. With where Halo 5 ended up, I think we got to the point where you had basically all the main game modes you would expect. You had all of the cool weapons, you had all these cool maps, and they really could have continued to build upon that. Maybe we could have finally gotten a developer-made BTB map, or maybe we could have just continued to get new arena maps and new weapons for the sandbox. Whatever they decided to do, the players that were still playing Halo 5 would have loved to see more new cool content. We did get some pretty cool things from the Sustain team, like the Mythic Arena playlist, But at the end of the day, while I did really like that playlist, it was a playlist mostly put together from the community. It was a handful of Forge maps and game modes that were tuned from within Halo 5. Nothing like getting completely new and unique game modes. I really believe that if Halo 5 had continued to get updates past 2017, that Halo as a whole would be in a better place. Now I understand many of you probably don't really care for Halo 5, and that's totally fine. I'm not trying to convince you to go and play Halo 5. All I'm saying is that 343 basically dropping their newest title for over 3, possibly 4 years before Infinite even comes out probably isn't the best decision. To me, in this day and age of live service, which I know can be kind of a taboo word, you expect the games that you're playing to continue to receive updates. So when 343, for the most part, abandoned Halo 5 after 2017, to the players of Halo 5 that shows them that they should just move on and play other games. If they had continued to get those updates, it would have given them more incentive to continue playing or to return back to Halo 5 if they had fallen off. At this point, the only reason to return back to Halo 5 is because you're sitting there thinking like, oh man, I liked when I played Halo 5, but there's really no new and cool unique things to pull you back. Now obviously 343 did pivot a bit because they ported the MCC to PC, and I'm sure that took plenty of development resources along with developing Infinite, so I do understand why Halo 5 support was probably dropped. At the end of the day, all I'm really saying is that I think Halo 5 and Halo as a whole would have benefited from continued updates. Anyways guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. In this video, I really just wanted to dive back into the history of Halo 5 and talk about all the different updates that it received over the year or two that it actually got updates. Halo 5 is a story of a game that launched pretty devoid of content, but was able to build upon that and end up with a pretty well fleshed out game. If you don't enjoy Halo 5 due to some of the core mechanics, I totally understand that. Not everyone is a fan of sprint, not everyone's a fan of thrust, etc. But I really do think that 343 did a good job with post-launch updates to really turn Halo 5 into a full package by the end of the day. Now what I'm hoping to see is that with the delay to Halo Infinite, instead of getting things like BTB and Assault and Oddball and Infection and the Customs Browser and Forge, instead of getting all of that post-launch, I hope that we see that all on day one, and all of the post-launch content for Halo Infinite is cool new things that we aren't even thinking about right now. I don't want to spend the first year or two of Halo Infinite getting features that we already had in previous games. As always though, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. I know this one was a bit of a longer video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If for some reason you want to support the channel monetarily, you can hit that join button. Otherwise, come over and catch me live on Twitch where we play a ton of Halo and other games. You can also follow me on Twitter if you wish, and if not, I'll see you next time.
Lost the lead.